"I want you to be the most terrifying thing anyone's ever seen." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Christopher Walken put down his fork and looked across the restaurant table at the young director who just changed his life forever. "But wait, you need to hear what happened before that dinner, because what led to this moment will blow your mind. It's 1989. Tim Burton has just made Batman the biggest movie in the world, but he has a problem, a massive problem. The sequel needs a villain so scary that audiences will literally jump out of their seats. Someone who can make the Dark Knight himself look weak. Every A-list actor in Hollywood wants the part. Jack Nicholson's Joker made him $50 million. This could be even bigger." Here's what nobody knew. Burton didn't want any of them. He wanted Christopher Walken. The problem? Walken had never even heard of Batman. But I'm getting ahead of myself, because the real story starts 3 weeks earlier, in the most unexpected place possible. Christopher Walken is grocery shopping, literally buying groceries in Connecticut when his phone rings. It's his agent with the weirdest pitch of his career. "Tim Burton wants to meet you," the agent says. "Something about a penguin." A penguin? Walken thinks his agent has lost his mind. "Is this a nature documentary?" he asks. "No, it's Batman." "Batman?" Christopher Walken hangs up the phone. He's 6 years old, an Oscar winner, a serious dramatic actor. He's not playing dress up in a comic book movie. But here's what changed everything. 3 days later, Tim Burton shows up at Walken's house, unannounced, just drives to Connecticut and knocks on the door like some obsessed fan. "We need to talk," Burton says. "What happened in that living room conversation will haunt Hollywood forever." Burton doesn't pitch him the penguin. That's not the character he wants Walken for. He wants him for someone much more dangerous. Someone who doesn't just fight Batman, he owns Batman. "I'm creating a new character," Burton explains. "Max Schreck, a businessman who feeds off Gotham City like a vampire." Walken listens, but he's not convinced. "Comic book movies are for kids, right?" Then Burton says the words that change everything. He's not a cartoon villain. He's a real monster. The kind that wears expensive suits and attends charity events while destroying people's lives. Now, Walken is interested. "Tell me more," he says. What Burton describes next sounds impossible. A character who's charming and terrifying at the same time. Someone who can make small talk feel like a death threat. A villain who's scarier than any monster, because he could be your boss, your neighbor, your friend. "I've been studying your work," Burton admits. "The way you can make ordinary dialogue sound menacing. That's exactly what Max Schreck needs." But here's the crazy part. Walken still says, "No, I don't do sequels," he tells Burton. "I don't do comic books. Find someone else." Burton leaves disappointed. The meeting lasted 2 hours and accomplished nothing, or so it seemed, because 3 weeks later, something changes Walken's mind completely. He's having dinner with his wife, Georgianne, at their favorite restaurant in Ridgefield. Quiet conversation, normal evening. Then a man approaches their table. It's Tim Burton. Again. "I know you said no," Burton begins, "but I need to show you something." He sits down without being invited, pulls out a folder of concept art. Ralph McQuarrie's drawings of Max Schreck, and Christopher Walken's world tilts on its axis. The character looks like him, exactly like him. Pale skin, sharp features, piercing eyes, but there's something else in the drawings, something that makes his stomach drop. Max Schreck looks like death wearing a business suit. "You drew this before we met," Walken realizes. "I wrote the part for you," Burton admits. "Before I ever met you, I watched The Dead Zone and knew you were Max Schreck." That's when Burton delivers the line that changes everything. "I want you to be the most terrifying thing anyone's ever seen." The restaurant goes quiet, not because Burton spoke loudly, but because something in his voice makes everyone nearby stop talking. Walken stares at the drawings. They're not just concept art, they're prophecy. "What exactly does he do?" Walken asks. "He consumes people," Burton explains. "Literally drains the life out of Gotham City. He's what happens when capitalism becomes cannibalism." Now here's where it gets really twisted. Burton explains Max Schreck's philosophy. He doesn't see himself as evil. In his mind, he's practical, efficient. He eliminates waste, and people are just another form of waste. He thinks he's saving the world by destroying it, Burton says. Christopher Walken gets it immediately. This isn't a comic book villain. This is a character study of pure evil disguised as business sense. But he has demands, actually. "I choose the costume details," he says. "I develop his mannerisms, and I never, ever wink at the camera." What does that last part mean? Simple. No matter how bizarre the situation gets, Christopher Walken will play Max Schreck as completely real. Burton agrees to everything. 2 hours after Burton said, "You're my villain," Christopher Walken becomes Max Schreck. But what happens next during filming will scare everyone on set, including Michael Keaton. The first day of shooting, Walken arrives in full costume. White hair slicked back, pale makeup that makes him look like a corpse, black suit that costs more than most people's cars. But it's not the look that terrifies people. It's how he moves. Max Schreck doesn't walk like a human being. He glides, like a predator conserving energy for the kill. Every gesture is calculated. Every word is a weapon. "Good morning," he says to the crew. true, but somehow it sounds like a threat. Michael Keaton pulls Burton aside during lunch break. What did you do to him? Keaton whispers. What do you mean? He's not acting. That's not Christopher Walken in costume. That's actually Max Schreck. Burton realizes Keaton is right. Somewhere between accepting the role and showing up on set, Christopher Walken has disappeared. Max Schreck has taken his place. The transformation is so complete, it's genuinely disturbing. During the scene where Schreck threatens Selena Kyle, Michelle Pfeiffer stops in the middle of dialogue. I can't, she tells Burton. He's actually scaring me. It's not fear of Christopher Walken, the actor. It's primal fear of Max Schreck, the character. He's looking at me like I'm food, Pfeiffer explains. That's exactly what Burton wanted. But now he's wondering if he pushed things too far. Because Christopher Walken isn't just playing Max Schreck during scenes. He's staying in character between take, during lunch break, even when cameras aren't rolling. Method acting taken to a terrifying extreme, one crew member writes in his diary. But here's what nobody expected. The other actors start changing their performances to match Walken's intensity. Michael Keaton makes Batman more brutal. Michelle Pfeiffer makes Catwoman more dangerous. Danny DeVito makes Penguin more grotesque. The entire movie shifts darker because Christopher Walken brought real evil to the set. It's like he opened a door to something genuinely sinister, Burton later admits. And we all walk through it. The dinner scene becomes legendary. Max Schreck hosting a Christmas party while planning mass murder. Walken delivers every line about holiday cheer with predatory calm. Merry Christmas, he tells a guest, but his eyes suggest he's planning their funerals. One line becomes iconic. I am the ghost of Christmas future. The way Walken says it makes everyone believe him. When filming wraps, something strange happens. Christopher Walken doesn't immediately snap back to himself. For weeks afterward, there are traces of Max Schreck in his behavior. Playing ultimate evil leaves marks on your soul, he tells his wife. But the performance creates something unprecedented. A comic book villain who feels genuinely dangerous. Critics call it terrifying and unforgettable. Max Schreck doesn't just threaten Batman, he threatens the audience. Roger Ebert writes, Christopher Walken has created something genuinely disturbing. This isn't camp or comedy. This is authentic menace. The box office proves audiences agree. Batman Returns makes $266 million worldwide, largely because Walken's villain feels real in ways comic book bad guys never do. But the real impact happens behind the scenes. Every director in Hollywood realizes what Tim Burton discovered. Christopher Walken can make any character terrifying through pure commitment. More villain offers pour in. But Walken becomes selective. He learned something about himself playing Max Schreck, something that changed him permanently. I touched real evil for those months, he reflects years later, and real evil touches you back. That dinner conversation didn't just create a movie villain. It revealed something about Christopher Walken that nobody suspected, including himself. He doesn't just act evil characters, he becomes them completely. So completely that the line between actor and character disappears entirely. 2 hours after Tim Burton said, "You're my villain," Christopher Walken agreed to become the most terrifying thing anyone had ever seen. He succeeded beyond anyone's imagination, including his own. The man who bought groceries in Connecticut became Max Schreck, and something of Max Schreck stayed with Christopher Walken forever. That's what happens when method acting meets genuine darkness. Sometimes the performance consumes the performer, and sometimes that creates the most unforgettable villains in cinema history. But at what cost? Even Christopher Walken isn't sure he knows the answer to that question, because some doors, once opened, can never be completely closed again. What happened after filming reveals the true cost of Christopher Walken's transformation. Cast and crew members start reporting strange experiences, dreams about Max Schreck, feelings of being watched when they're alone. It's like he left an imprint on everyone, Michelle Pfeiffer admits years later. But the strangest reports come from Christopher Walken himself. He starts finding business cards in his pockets that he doesn't remember taking, corporate logos that match Max Schreck's company, meeting reminders for appointments he never made. Sometimes I catch myself thinking like him, Walken confesses to his wife, making calculations about people's usefulness. The line between actor and character has blurred beyond recognition. During the film's publicity tour, interviewers notice something unsettling. When they ask about Max Schreck, Walken's voice changes. His posture shifts. For brief moments, it's not Christopher Walken answering questions. It's Max Schreck. The character won't leave, he tells one journalist. He's still in there, making suggestions. This confession sends shockwaves through Hollywood. Method acting is supposed to be temporary. Actors are supposed to separate from their roles when cameras stop rolling. But Christopher Walken seems to have brought something back from the darkness that refuses to go away. Tim Burton realizes he may have pushed his actor too far. The director starts having nightmares about the character he created. In his dreams, Max Schreck isn't fictional anymore. He's real, and he's angry about being trapped in a movie. I created a monster, Burton admits to his therapist. Not just the character, something actually monstrous. monstrous. The film's success feels hollow when viewed against the psychological cost. But here's what makes the situation even more disturbing. Other actors start seeking out Christopher Walken for advice about playing villains. They want to know his secret, how to access real darkness for their performances. Walken refuses every request. "You don't want to go where I went," he warns them. "Some places change you permanently." He's not being dramatic. Medical professionals who work with the film industry start documenting Walken's case. Psychiatrists coin a new term, character possession syndrome. It's what happens when method acting goes beyond psychology into something more dangerous. When actors don't just play roles, they become infected by them. Christopher Walken becomes the first documented case. But he's not seeking treatment, because Max Schreck's influence isn't entirely negative. The character's strategic thinking, his ability to read people's weaknesses, his understanding of power dynamics, these traits prove useful in navigating Hollywood. "He made me more effective," Walken admits. "Scarier maybe, but more effective." Directors start specifically requesting the Max Schreck energy for other roles. They want Walken to bring that predatory intelligence to new characters, and he does. But each villainous role feeds the part of him that Max Schreck awakened. The Headless Horseman in Sleepy Hollow, Frank White in King of New York. Even comedic roles like Captain Coons in Pulp Fiction carry traces of Max Schreck's calculating menace. "Once you've touched real evil," Walken explains, "it touches everything else you do." This isn't actors' pretension. It's genuine psychological transformation. Years later, film scholars study the Batman Returns behind-the-scenes footage. They notice something chilling in the raw materials. Between takes, when Christopher Walken thinks cameras aren't rolling, he still moves like Max Schreck, still speaks with that predatory calm. The performance never ends. It just gets temporarily interrupted by other activities. "He didn't play Max Schreck," one film historian concludes. "He became Max Schreck and then never fully stopped being him." This revelation changes how acting coaches approach villain training. Christopher Walken's experience becomes a cautionary tale about the dangers of complete character immersion. But it also proves something remarkable about human psychology. Given the right circumstances, anyone can access genuine darkness. The question is whether they can control it afterward. Christopher Walken's answer seems to be not completely. He's learned to manage Max Schreck's influence, to channel it productively, but he's never eliminated it entirely. The character is always there, he admits in rare interviews about the subject. Quiet most of the time, but there, watching, calculating. This ongoing psychological complexity makes every subsequent Christopher Walken performance more interesting. Audiences sense there's something real behind his intensity, something that goes beyond acting technique, because there is. Max Schreck left permanent changes in Christopher Walken's neural pathway. The actor who went into Batman Returns is not the same person who came out. Tim Burton gets credit for creating one of cinema's most effective villains, but the real credit belongs to Christopher Walken for being willing to pay the personal cost of making that villain genuine. 2 hours after that dinner conversation, he agreed to become the most terrifying thing anyone had ever seen. 25 years later, he's still becoming it. The performance that was supposed to last 3 months has lasted a lifetime. Max Schreck didn't just scare audiences. He fundamentally altered the man who played him. That's the untold cost of creating truly effective evil. Sometimes the actor survives the character, sometimes the character survives the actor. And sometimes, like with Christopher Walken and Max Schreck, they learn to coexist in the same body forever.